And joining us now in studio, Carmen Aguirre, author of Something Fierce, Memoirs of a Revolutionary Daughter. Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I want to go back to the year 1973. You are 6 years old and you and your family fled Chile in the wake of the military coup that put Augusto Pinochet into power. Take me back to that time and about that transition of power.
Yes, well, there was a democratically elected socialist president in Chile. His name was Salvador Allende. His big crime, and I'm being sarcastic when I say that, was that he was all about nationalizing Chilean resources that were in multinationals' hands. So when he started doing that, Nixon and Kissinger started to mastermind the coup in Chile. It took them 3 years to do it. And in the end, they were able to convince the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, who at that time was Augusto Pinochet, to do the coup, which was funded by Noranda, a Canadian mining company, and IT&T, and completely organized by the CIA in tandem with local elites that were against the socialist president because they were terrified that socialism would mean that they would have to give up their money. So in a nutshell, that is how and why the coup happened. When it happened, it was much more brutal and bloody than a lot of people thought it would be. Where my family fits in is that my parents were university teachers at a university in the south of Chile, in Valdivia. They were very much in favor of the socialist government, and that immediately got them on the blacklist. And within 2 months of the coup, we had left the country.
And came to Canada.
Yes.
You write about a specific experience that you and your sister, Alejandra Ali, as you call her, had with the Chilean military police. Tell me about that experience.
Yes, well, I don't want to give away the entire book. This is the thing about these interviews, right? So, yeah, so I think that the whole book, the way that it's structured, leads to that point, to the point that you're referring to, which is at the center of the book, and it comes in an unexpected way. Needless to say, I won't give it away, but I will say that the military did visit our house. That is to say, they raided our house before we left Chile, looking for my mother and father.
And for an innocuous reason, at least perception-wise at first.
Right.
Okay,
yes.
We'll leave it at that. You'll have to read Carmen's book to get the answers. Okay, so then you're in Canada at the age of 11. Your mother and your stepfather, Bob, returned to South America. Why did they choose to go back with their two daughters?
Yes, so the resistance, there was a resistance movement to Pinochet, which was completely destroyed between 1973 and 1976. And what I mean by destroyed is destroyed through murder, torture, disappearance, and exile. So in 1978, the underground resistance in Chile made an international call to Chilean exiles living all over the world, and to anybody who wanted to join the Chilean resistance, regardless of their nationality, to go back to Chile and join the underground. So that is where Bob, who was like this white Canadian guy, my stepfather, and my mother decided to heed that call, as it were, and we went back. Now, my mother decided to take my sister and I was 11, my sister was 10. She could have left us here in Canada with my father, or she could have sent us to Cuba, where volunteer families were helping to raise children of resistance members. But she decided to take us with her, and that's when our adventure began.
Why did she decide to take you?
She felt that it was not fair for a woman to have to make a choice between being a revolutionary and being a mother. She felt that she could do both and that there should not be a contradiction in that.
You mentioned your stepfather, Bob, who you talk so much about in this book, and with such adoration for him. His time in Chile, as you said, he was a white Canadian.
Yeah.
Describe him more. He was in a concentration camp in Chile at one point.
Yes. So during the socialist government in Chile, there were many foreigners that came to live in Chile from all over the world because they wanted to see if that experiment would work. The experiment being that Allende wanted to make revolutionary changes in Chile without the revolution. So if that would have worked, a lot of people in the world would have followed his example, which is why many people from all over the world went to live there. One of them being Bob. And Bob was volunteering in a shanty town of Santiago when the coup happened. And the people who were most repressed during the coup and during the dictatorship were the poor. So of course the shantytown was immediately raided by the military, and Bob ended up in a concentration camp, which was the National Stadium. So all the jails were full to the point where stadiums, soccer stadiums, were being used as concentration camps. And about 120,000 prisoners went through that camp, including Bob. If you were a foreigner in Chile at the time of the coup, you were going to get arrested, simply because Pinochet knew that you were probably there supporting the Allende government.
The resistance.
Yeah, or the socialist government, right? You were there supporting him. Yeah.
You mentioned the repression, obviously, I mean, being so brutal, but it didn't, it extended beyond Chile. And you talk about an operation known as Operation Condor. Condor, what was that?
So that, again, was masterminded by Nixon and Kissinger. And it was basically a system that was put in place all through South America, which at that time, much of South America was under right-wing dictatorial rule, where the secret police of all of these countries, so I'm talking about Chile, Argentina, Peru, Bolivia, Uruguay, Brazil, etc., worked with each other. So you could be a Chilean living in Brazil, doing solidarity work for the resistance in Chile, and the Brazilian secret police could pick you up, transport you illegally through a bunch of borders, and hand you over to the Chilean secret police.
Extradite you in a sense, yes.
Or they could just do away with you in Brazil. So, for example, to this day, there's still about 180 Chilean resistance members who have disappeared in Argentina, in the hands of the Argentinian secret police. And this was all coordinated in this operation called Operation Condor.
Your family then settles for some time in La Paz, the capital of Bolivia, and you described the political situation in Bolivia at the time as a powder keg. How so?
When we lived in Bolivia, we lived through, I think, 2 or 3 coups in Bolivia. This is in the very early 80s. The most brutal one being the Garcia Mesa coup and subsequent dictatorship. Why was all of this happening in South America at that time? Not because South Americans can't get it together, which is what the mainstream media in the North likes to tell us, which as far as I'm concerned is just systemic racism, but because all of this was because there was an experiment which is called neoliberalism, which is now all over the world, of course. But Chile was the first country in the world which was a guinea pig for neoliberal economics, which was invented by Milton Friedman at the University of Chicago. And the 17 economists that took over the Chilean economy once Pinochet took over were educated at the University of Chicago, the School of Economics, directly educated by Milton Friedman. Now, neoliberalism, as you know, is deregulated capitalism. And the only way for it to work is to impose it on a population violently. That was happening all over South America. That was the vision from the North, because South America has historically always been there to provide cheap labor, if not slave labor, and raw resources to the North. Anytime South America has tried to stop that and take back its power, this is what's happened. Of course, now we have the Bolivian Revolution happening in South America, which I'm very supportive of. And that revolution is anti-neoliberalism and for regulated capitalism. So again, I could go on about this for a while, but there is a reason why the same thing was happening in Bolivia. Not because the Bolivians can't get it together, but because there was a much larger, extremely right-wing vision at play.
From Bolivia, after spending some time there, you sneak in back into Chile with your sister to spend a summer with your grandparents. And you describe that summer in the book as the last summer of your childhood. How old were you at the time?
12.
12.
Yeah.
Why did you describe it as the last summer of your childhood?
Because that's when I lost my innocence. So that's the first time I fell head over heels in love with my first cousin. And then I had my heart smashed. It was the summer that I got my period. It was the first time that I ever went back to Chile. So I went into exile when I was 6 years old, and I went back, and that just shook my world forever, to go back to that country that I loved so much, and to be with my relatives who I had not seen. Being there, knowing that my parents could not go back because they were on the blacklist, it was all just mind-blowing. So in retrospect,
yeah,
right?
it's the year the summer you grew up.
Yes, exactly.
Where the blinders came off the childhood innocence,
Yeah.
and you could see with more clarity what your world was like. And then you moved around so much all these years, and part of that was because your family had to. So at the age of 15, you moved to Argentina, and you spend most of your days at home cleaning.
Yes.
What was that? And there's a reason you spend most of your time cleaning, which I want you to talk to me about. What was this period of time like for you?
Well, it was very, very hard, right? So my family was in charge of running safe houses for resistance members going in and out of Chile, in Bolivia and in Argentina, and also doing lots of other work, as it were. When we left Bolivia, I was devastated. I did not want to leave Bolivia. I loved Bolivia more than anything. So I was 15 years old, and we were living in Bariloche, this Argentinian ski resort, which borders Chile in Patagonia, running this safe house. We had kind of lost everything. Like in Bolivia, we had quite a high standard of living because both Bob and my mother had great jobs. In Bariloche, we were poor. So I think I got, what do you call that? OCD?
Obsessive compulsive
disorder. So the way that I dealt with all this change and this trauma in my life at that age was to clean all day.
You're shutting down emotionally,
yes,
perhaps.
Yeah.
You talked about your mom and Bob having these jobs. It was all part of a ruse or a cover that they had to maintain throughout your childhood. They were always doing different things. But specifically in Argentina at that time, what were they doing for the Chilean resistance?
Well, one of the many things that they had to do, aside from run the safe house, is...
and that was for other dissidents you were taking in?
Yes, yeah. So they had to figure out ways to get into Chile through the Andes Mountains in that region, which is a very difficult region because it's a ski resort. So that is to say, it's freezing.
Yeah.
It's covered in snow most of the time. So they had to clear trails through the Andes Mountains and just figure out different ways to get in and out of Chile through those mountains on foot without being intercepted, of course, by the military, who were, of course, very much watching the mountains all the time, right? Precisely because they didn't want people going in and out.
You know, when I think about it, the conversations I was having at 15 with my mother was like, we were talking about how was your day at work? I mean, when you asked your mother those kinds of questions, her work obviously was very untraditional. But what was the relationship between you and your mother in your teenage years?
It was very difficult, right? So my mother, my sister and I had a lot of responsibility very young, right? So we had to lead a double life, right? There was always an official story that we had to tell the outside world, which was a complete pack of lies. Like we could never tell anybody that we had been born in Chile. We had to tell people that my stepfather was my father, all kinds of other things.
That you were born in Canada, raised in Canada.
All of that, yeah. And that, they were running an import-export company and that's why we were living there, et cetera. So a lot of responsibility. There was a lot of secrecy. Like I said, we would hide people in our house. Obviously, nobody could ever know that. These people are on the most wanted list. They're very important resistance members. So there was that, which I felt very proud of, to be a part of that. But also there was the typical teenage preoccupations of boys and pop culture and fashion and makeup. And my mother did not support that. She found that frivolous, as opposed to this is what teenage girls go through and it's a healthy thing to go through. So the relationship with her was tense many times, as it is with many teenage girls and their mothers. But I guess it was intensified because of the situation that we were in.
Your mother, when she comes back to Argentina, you write about that. I want you to read a little bit about what you say about that experience, if you don't mind.
Yes. Yes, this is when my mother was crossing the mountains and she had an accident, right? Yeah. A voice reached me from a distance. I was so cold, as if I was trying to shake myself out of my old skin and into a new one. The heater still wasn't working, and it was 20 below zero outside. The voice got closer, my mother's. She was saying that she had died and then come back into her body because she knew she couldn't leave us alone. I struggled to make sense of her words. For as long as I could remember, she had left us alone.
I wonder, it's such a powerful statement that you're making there. What sort of feelings did you have for your mother at that time?
Oh, I mean, I loved her and I hated her and I wanted to kill her.
But in a more intense way than most teenage girls have towards their mother, of course.
Yes. Yeah, it was very, very hard.
Did you understand why she was doing what she was doing at that time?
Yes, I understood completely why she was doing it, yeah.
And now, many years on, what's your relationship and how you perceive your mom?
Oh, I think it's great what she did. I think it's great.
Because I think a lot of people would say that's no way to raise a child.
Yes.
That she would have been better off sending you to a family in Cuba or letting you, or telling you that you were going to stay in Canada with your Vancouver, but you don't see it that way.
Well, you see, I'm at an age where if you still blame your childhood for the problems in your life, I think you're a bit of a loser.
You've gotten over it.
So I'm really grateful for my childhood.
Do you still see your mother? You have a good relationship with her?
Oh, yes, yes.
What did she think about you writing this book?
She's very supportive of it. It was very hard for her to read it, of course. It was very moving for her. She cried a lot. She laughed a lot when she read it. And she's ultimately very supportive of the book.
Okay, so the Chilean resistance ramps up and its activity, the Pinochet regime is sort of responding in kind. And then your mother sends you and your sister back here to Canada, BC.
Yes.
And it had just gotten too dangerous, I'm guessing she thought, for her children to stay. And then you're 18 and you have your soon-to-be husband in tow with you, and you decide, you're 18 now and you're an adult, you can do what you want, that you will go back to South America.
Yes.
Why would you do that?
Well, first of all, many people did that all over the world. Many Chileans from all over the world went back to join the resistance, so that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I did. The resistance in Chile, just like anywhere else in Latin America, is made up mostly of young people, right? So when you're a young person, when you're a teenager, basically, you are considered a citizen of the world. And you have rights and you have responsibilities. And it is your responsibility to work for your country and to get politically involved. It doesn't matter what side you're on. You become politically involved, you have an opinion, you don't say that you're neutral, you figure out what's going on, you keep yourself informed. So many people who were in the Chilean resistance were 18 years old. So that is not an extraordinary thing. And I know many people in Toronto, Chileans in Toronto, who joined the resistance when they were 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So again, this is not an extraordinary thing. And to me, it was a given that I would always go back and do that. It was not really a choice. I just knew that that was what I had to do, and I was very proud to do that.
What did you do in the resistance?
My first husband and I ended up living in Argentina, where we also ran a safe house. And we did a lot of border work. That is to say, we had to cross into Chile a lot, carrying goods. And we also learned how to fly planes. And that was kind of cut short. Like, we didn't get to do very much with the planes because then the dictatorship was over shortly after we started to do that.
You learned to fly because you were going to take supplies across the border and drop them into Chile.
Yes, exactly. And people, but again, then the dictatorship was over shortly after we started doing that, so that didn't get very far.
So you're smuggling people into Chile, essentially.
Yes, yeah.
You know, you're sitting here some years on, and I can appreciate that it's your life, so you might not see it as remarkable as I do sitting across the table. But I'm looking at you, seem like a well-together person. You have a young son, 5 years old. I wonder what sort of physical and mental toll has your childhood had on you? I know you said you want to get past it, but it certainly must have had a toll.
Yes, it had a toll, but you see, I was very lucky in the sense that I went to theater school. I'm an actor. I went to theater school when I was 22. I went to a Shakespearean acting conservatory. So basically what that means is that if you're going to be a stage actor, if you're going to be any kind of actor, but very specifically a stage actor, you have to have access to your emotional life, and you have to get rid of any blocks that you might have. And also you have to get rid of any blocks that you might have in order to use your voice properly. So it was immediately apparent to my instructors when I was 22 years old that there was a lot of trauma and a lot of blocks in my body, and that if I wanted to get through that program, I had to deal with that, otherwise I would not make it through the program and I would never be able to be an actor. So it is thanks to that training that I was forced, as it were, to heal through therapy, through body work. So I was able to heal. There are people my age who did the exact same thing I did who are very sick right now, and who they themselves say are very sick because of the trauma and the stress of being in that situation for so long at such a young age. And when I say that they're very sick, I mean that they're quite young and they've got cancer, they've got multiple sclerosis, they have serious health issues.
Physical health
Yes.
issues, as well as I would guess emotional ones as well.
Yes, yes.
And that begs me to ask a question about your sister, and you have a brother as well that grew up traveling around, not traveling, being part of the resistance as a young baby. How are they doing?
Oh, they're great, yeah.
And they were supportive of you writing this book?
Yes, yes, they're both very supportive of the book, yeah.
You have talked a little bit earlier about your views of Latin America today, but I want to pick up a little bit more on that. You know, Pinochet outlasts the resistance. Do you see hope for justice and equality in Latin America with the new socialism and leftist governments that have come into power?
Yes, I do. I'm very supportive of them. I'm very supportive of
and
what
why?
Well, because again, you have to put it in context, right? So for the last 500 years, Latin America has had basically one function: to provide raw resources and slave labor to the north. That's starting to change now. And that didn't come out of the blue. So what's happening right now in Latin America, the Bolivian Revolution is what it's called, didn't come out of the blue. It wasn't invented by Chavez in Venezuela, somebody who I greatly respect, admire, and support. It is a movement that comes, it's taken centuries to get to where we are right now in Latin America, and it'll take probably another few centuries to reach the vision of the Bolivian Revolution. But I think considering everything that stands in its way, and the recent history of Latin America, the gains that have been made in such a short time, I find it admirable.
You also talk a little bit about the difference between charity and solidarity, and you make that delineation. You say it's very important.
Yeah.
Why?
Charity is vertical, right? It's me giving somebody like this, okay, here's a coin, here's a house, or whatever it is that I'm giving, and it maintains the power relationship intact, and it doesn't change any kind of structure or system. Whereas solidarity is horizontal. Galeano has a great quote, which I forgot exactly how it goes. I'm kind of paraphrasing him right now. Eduardo Galeano is what I mean, the man who wrote Open Veins of Latin America. So to me, charity maintains everything intact, whereas solidarity does not.
That was the book, I think, that Chavez gave to President Obama.
That's right, yes, yes. It's
Okay.
a Bible in Latin America. Everybody in Latin America reads that book, yeah.
Okay. You mentioned about how acting helped you cope, deal with all this stuff. And you now have a play based on your life and your book. What's the message you're trying to send? Because in one sense, this book is just someone's personal story about their life. It was just an untraditional childhood. In another way, you are trying to make, I think, some sort of political statement, are you not?
No. It would be so arrogant on my part, too. I never write to give a message. I would consider that arrogant. I mean, if people are entertained by the book and they get something out of it, that's great. That's all I strive for. Same with the play.
But at the same time, you say, you know, you're very supportive of Evo Morales. I think in your acknowledgments
Yes.
there, you talk about him, that you're supportive of Chavez. I mean, that in itself is taking a stance on the politics and how the North, as you say, is viewing Latin America.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that a message, though. That's just my opinion. I'm on the left. And I'm very supportive of the Bolivian Revolution. So that's my opinion, as opposed to, I'm not trying to make anybody else join the left or see the error of their ways or anything like that. I would consider that arrogant.
When's the last time you've been in Chile?
God, I haven't been there for like 15 years.
Could you go back now?
Oh, I'm assuming I could. I mean, I haven't tried since I wrote the book. But I'm assuming it's fine.
Carmen
Yeah.
Aguirre, this is an excellent book. It was a real peek behind the curtain about life that is unknown to so many of us. Thank you for writing it, and thank you for coming in today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.